Hi, my name is Courtney McInerney. This is the second video in a series of how to do embodied or experiential learning, particularly thinking about drama, creative drama, applied theater work over Zoom, but can be thought of for several different courses. So you see me here opening up the class, and you'll see that I also have that Google Doc session plan in my window, so I can look through it, and each of the participants also have that pulled up for themselves. You'll also notice that in the Zoom chat, they've all been adding their check-in, and I also have copied and pasted the norms for dialogue over Zoom. Uh, you might not have to do that every single class session, but for the first few, just to remind participants what to expect, that's a good idea. And I keep the check-in because it's a ritual that we've done in our in-person classes. So then to pull that ritual into these on-person or online courses can be really helpful for establishing continuity. You'll see also in the chat bar there are some private questions and responses going on. You can shut that function off when you plan the session, but I chose to keep it open. Now we're going to move into doing a quick warm-up game of 2 by 3 by Bradford, and you'll see I'm putting participants into breakout rooms. And I'm manually doing this, but you can also automatically assign it. So I've put Jess and Katie in one room, and then I put Elise in another because I am going to actually check in with Elise really quickly. And she came in a little later than everyone else, so I just wanted to take a moment and chat with her and catch her up on what we're doing. So you can see here, I am joining the breakout room. Um, You'll notice that it takes a little while for the breakout rooms to open. So it's important to leave more time than you would normally give any exercise. To leave, I would say, at least 5 more minutes than what you normally need. There's lag time on Zoom. There's these breakout rooms that take a little while to go in and out of. There's just giving lots of directions so people know what to expect. So you see now I'm returning to the main session, and I've muted everyone when they enter in. And I've ended the breakout rooms. So it's going to take a minute for everyone to come back, but I skipped ahead to that. So now everyone's back out of their breakout rooms, and I've muted all of them. We're going to now play a quick game that if we were in person, we might play in a circle, each sharing a sound and gesture. But because we're online, instead I'm going to have everyone muted and then unmute one person at a time so that we can effectively have each person share their sound and gesture and the rest of us echo that sound and gesture back. You'll notice that I'm taking a while to give instructions and make sure everyone's clear on what's going on. I also have those instructions written on the Google Doc. And I do this because I want students to be able to track along in a variety of different ways. If something momentarily interrupted their focus, like a younger sibling coming into the room, they would be able to look on that Google Doc and catch back up with what's happening. This is also really helpful for someone who's watching the video asynchronously. They can either go back and rewind the video to listen to the instructions again, or they can check that Google Doc. And it just gives the participants some agency as they're moving through the session. They know what's coming. They know what kind of space they need to be prepared. They know what kind of focus they're going to need to bring into the session. So again, here I'm just explaining to everyone what to anticipate as we move into this exercise, making sure we're all clear on what's happening. Another thing to notice is that all of the participants are seated right now. So you might want to just invite participants to look over the session plan in advance and choose a way to position their bodies that will best honor and capture their aesthetic choices throughout the session. So, and also that best meets their needs in the context that they're in while they're learning from home or wherever they're learning online. Again, I'm using these breakout rooms, and this time, I apologize, they are going back to 2 by 3 by Bradford. So they're repeating that activity again. And you'll see here I'm using that broadcast feature that's on the breakout rooms to tell them step by step what the instructions for 2 by 3 by Bradford are. So they're not doing the circle exercise yet. This is for 2 by 3 by Bradford. And again, I'm going to pop in with Elise because she doesn't have a partner to do the exercise with. Um, and so I've popped in to chat with Elise and do this exercise with her. But Jess in the other breakout room needs help. So it's best to make sure that you don't need to be with one of the students because you might need to go support students in another breakout room. So here I'm checking in with them to see how things are going. That's a great feature that the participants have on Zoom is that they can request that the host come to help them. And I'm going to leave this breakout room and call everyone back to the main session. One of the things about using Zoom, again, is that it takes a while to go back and forth from the main session to the breakout rooms. So you might not stop for reflection as often as you would stop for reflection if you were doing this in person. For example, for 2 by 3 by Bradford, I'm going to broadcast those instructions to them for each step, and they're also scaffolded on the Google Doc, but I'm actually going to call them back at the end of the exercise to reflect and check in and make sure and see how things went rather than going back and forth. So, to that end, it's probably also a great idea to do some exercises that you've already done as students get used to the Zoom format, and then increase the or add in new exercises when there's a greater comfort with sort of this online format. So I've called everyone back from the breakout rooms again, and this time we're going to move into that circle activity where I will be muting everyone, and you'll see I'm able to do that using the participants list. I'm going to mute everyone and invite them to share out their sound and gesture. The reason why I mute everyone, even with a small group like this, is because the loop can be really challenging. So it can be tricky to manage sound. A lot of times there's extraneous sounds going on that the participants don't even realize and you can't figure out who it's coming from. And so I just think it's a good norm to make sure that everyone's on mute. And folks can use the chat box feature to chat with you personally or to just put the question out for the whole group, like Elise just did. And then you can respond to that either in text or vocally or privately, just to that one student if you would like. So you'll see I'm even muting myself for this exercise and then unmuting them person by person to share their gesture and sound. And then we are all repeating that gesture and sound back to them. Um, we all found that it was different, very different from a circle exercise that you would do in person, but it was still pretty fun and carried some of that same feeling of just doing something sort of silly. We did find that we all wanted to comment on how Zoom was working and if we were unmuted or not as we went through it. So that is just something to keep in mind. It might take a while for the fluidity that occurs in those exercises that take place in a circle to be mirrored in these Zoom meetings. But I think as your students get used to it, that sort of stopping to say, "Oh, is this working? Can you hear me? Oh, I'm unmuted now," will sort of decrease. So we all went through that exercise, um, and yeah, and then the next thing, listed on the Google Doc is that we would be reflecting on the aesthetics that were at play in our gestures. And I'm actually going to use the Google Doc like I might use a whiteboard to scribe some of the responses to that question. The great thing about that is that it keeps it archived, and then students can go back and respond to that and comment on that in the Google Doc later. And so, if you're wanting to use some of those reflections on a particular exercise as a way to prompt a further exploration, so for example, in this sample session plan, we would use those ideas to then generate a scene. Then it's a great idea to keep those tracked and not to put those in the Zoom chat, but rather to keep it in the Google Doc. The reason for that is just the Zoom chat downloads into a pretty simplistic format that's just sort of plain text. And so it's easier to read and format the Google Doc. So as we moved through that reflection, one of the things we noticed was just how all of our choices were made with our upper bodies. That might be something to, so just inviting your students to consider what frame they want to use as they're moving through this more embodied exploration, and how they want their physicality to be visible or not visible in that. Um, yeah, so thank you so much for joining this, or for watching this short video. I hope that this is helpful in thinking about how Zoom, the different features of Zoom, can be used to do embodied work. There's also a lot of asynchronous opportunities, and so I'll be working on developing some resources of how to use technology to create some asynchronous embodied learning opportunities for your students as well. Thanks so much, and best of luck as we all shift online. You'll see here we're checking out using that ritual and finishing the class.